So, as you can see by the title today and the topic of the video right here, and it's right here in the top right of the overlay, we are going to be talking about the 2K that happened on November 12th. And basically, I want to start off the video by saying that Optic won. And the only reason I'm starting this video by saying that is because I'm not really going to cover that in this video. I'll just basically just say, that's kind of what I expected. So as far as takeaways go, I'm going to be leaning more towards things that I didn't expect or things that I maybe learned about the game that I didn't know watching the 2K from whatever we could watch, because of course a lot of people didn't stream it, which was a huge problem in my opinion, but probably a topic for a separate video. um, but yeah, so I didn't want to talk too much about Optic, but I did want to start it by saying that they did win it in an amazing fashion. I believe the map count record was 27-1, which is pretty crazy to think about. So cheers to Optic. It looks like they're going to be the best team in Call of Duty again for another year. But we're going to start off today with Team Caliber. That's the first team I want to talk about, and mostly because they played Optic in the semifinals, and I think a lot of people did not expect Team Caliber to make it that far. So, just so you guys know, Team Caliber's roster is Accuracy, Chino, Theory, and Kenny, or Quavo Kenny, I think is his on Twitter. But these four players are players who have kind of been on like the fringe of the scene, I would say, between like the top 16 area since Jetpacks came out. Obviously, Kenny kind of made his debut in Advanced Warfare and then actually moved to Halo once the age restriction was put in. So basically, the same thing as Hugh after Advanced Warfare was forced to leave because he was not going to be able to compete. Um, but he's back obviously, and they had a very good showing. That their route wasn't exactly the greatest, right? They beat Allegiance, who with Spoof and Mayhem and those guys, and they're like a decent team, but I don't really know what to expect from them on a boots on the ground game yet. So for that one kind of doesn't surprise me. And then they beat Rocket Esports, who is Demi, Nelson, TCM, and Twists, who are four players who have been around for a pretty long time. Actually, probably since the last boots on the ground title, except for maybe Demi. I'm not entirely sure about his background. Um, but again, that's not really a strong roster, you would say. So, like, if you looked at those two teams on paper, I actually would have expected TK to win that matchup. But the third match that they played once they got into top 32, so this was for top 8, was the team going as Hunted, which was Parasite, Bose, Pharaoh, and Blast. And that matchup surprised me a lot. Parasite's team had been very good on the day, and they're kind of another team I wanted to talk about. So we can kind of mix and match the two and kind of use this as a segue. But Parasite's team had beaten Echo Fox earlier, which is a team that I thought was going to be one of the best teams on Boots, but I think it was also one of the most questionable because you talk about Gunless, who only came up into the pro scene last year from E United and has never really played a boots on the ground game at the top competitive level. Um, I thought that there might be some worries with their roster. Of course, their roster is Assault, who is a very good player in my opinion, boots on the ground or not. Obviously, we saw it last year in Cloud9. He was probably the best player on their team. And then there's Facento, who has been a proven player on boots on the ground and jetpacks. Obviously, came up in Advanced Warfare kind of, but was around the scene in Ghosts. I believe he played for EX, or what was it? Yeah, Excellence, I think is what the team was called. I could be wrong on that. But so he was around there, around that scene. So kind of like the top AM scene, I guess, in Ghosts. But then he obviously came out in Advanced Warfare and then was on Rise for for most of Black Ops 3. Um, and then the other team, or the other player, is Saints, who obviously, like, we all know who Saints is. He's amazing. He's like one of the best players in Call of Duty history, in my opinion, just based on like statistics and performances. I know like the casters at events, they always talk about how like for the longest time he never went negative overall KD for an event, which is just like a crazy statistic to think about. Um, but anyway, so that Echo Fox team got defeated by Parasite's team 3-2. That went to a Game 5 S&D, and that match was actually crazy. If you can go back and watch the VOD, I would highly recommend it because it was a really great series. And then after Parasite's team beat them, they play Naga BL Fire Study and Methods, who is another team that a lot of people think is going to be like a good team this year, who probably make the Pro League. And they end up um, beating them 3-0, which was really, really surprising. And, to be fair, Parasite was like destroying people all day. Like his AR shot in this 2K was really, really good. And Parasite, I mean, they didn't stream. He only streamed his VOD, right? So we couldn't see his face cam. We couldn't see the comms. So we don't know what the comms were like. But things seem to be clicking from what we've seen. And since that roster move happened, which of course they brought in Study now instead of Embos, but since that roster move, that like all the days they've been scrimming, they seem to have cooled down. Like that video that was on Twitter of them arguing and like Parasite threatening to leave the team, that doesn't look like that's going to be happening. That looks like that was just like a one-time thing, just like a heat of the moment deal, and he will be playing with this team full time. So, um, so TK and Parasite's team met in in top 8, and that was one of the craziest matchups I think of the entire weekend. Um, Not because of the matchup itself, I suppose, or not because of how the matches went, but I think just the series of those two teams playing was what was surprising because TK made a really, really good like run uh, in this tournament, like I said before, and they showed us that they're probably a team that can compete and may even make pro league. Which, to be honest with you, going into this tournament, I probably would not have expected that. I think if I made a list of the teams that I thought were going to make pro league from North America, I don't think TK would have been on it. So for them to have such a good run is very surprising to me. But I will say I don't think that they're going to be able to do it again, which is surprising to some people. Like, how can I say that a team that made top 4 won't make top 4 again, or like won't have a close to performance? Like, I actually think that TK will have a very rough go going forward. And so them making pro league, I think it's still a possibility. Like this still showed me that they could be a pro league team, but I still wouldn't necessarily. I don't know if I would expect them to now. Like I think they moved from like maybe like the top 12, top 12, top 16 area to like potentially top 8, but I think they're closer to like they're I still don't think they'll make the pro league when it comes down to it despite this good performance in the first 2K of the season. And then the other teams I wanted to talk about were FaZe getting beat by Zodiac, which FaZe getting beat by them kind of almost seems like like this seemed to happen to them in Infinite Warfare. Like very inconsistent placings. Like obviously in the next 2K, you'd expect FaZe to have a much better performance and get pro points back. And even FaZe could even make the finals in the next 2K, right? Like you never really know. But they're in a position where like they made a team change. They're back on boots, and all of these players, I think, except for replays, is really unproven in boots. Well, see, Zuma and Attach were kind of at the end of Ghosts. Like they were around the scene the whole time, and they were kind of at the end. And I can't remember if both of them were at Champs and Ghosts, but point is, they're all players that have made their living on Jetpack games. Obviously, like Attach won the World Championships in Advanced Warfare. Zuma was very, very good on a lot of these teams in Advanced Warfare. Like he was obviously with the FaZe roster when they had that huge like back and forth between Optic, kind of like in the summer and then into the fall before Black Ops 3. But overall, I think this FaZe roster has a lot to prove, and I think this is not a good start for them as far as proving that they can be a capable boots on the ground team. So, of course, they lost to Zodiac Esports. I'll just put that in there. So to congratulate Zodiac Esports on having a nice upset, and then they actually, funnily enough, beat another team, Team Solstice, who is a team that I really don't know anything about. To be honest, I actually don't know any of the players on their roster, but they winning that match actually put them into top 8 before they played LG, and obviously LG made it to the finals. So you all know how that series went. It went 3-0 to LG. And then besides those 3 teams, the other teams I want to talk about are Envy and Rise. I'll just bring that up. So that series was actually a really good series. Not necessarily like in the score, but I think all the games were pretty close. Rise ended up winning 3-0 though. And then the E6 United game, which we saw on stream, that was a really good match as well. United seemed to kind of throw it. I mean, they like both hard points, they lost by like 3 or 4 points each, and they like really made monumental mistakes to lose them. So it really should have been a United series to win, but they ended up losing to E6, who fair play to E6. They took advantage of the situation they were given and they won the series. And then E6 played Rise, and they won that series 3-2. And then obviously they ended up playing LG for top 4, and that's when LG defeated them. But E6 is another team where I didn't really know what to expect, just because they're, they've got General, who's like always been really good since Advanced Warfare when they came out, like when E6 had their like come out match against Optic. I believe it was at UMG Cali, that CTF game on Retreat, I want to say, was just crazy. Like if people remember it, or if people watched it live, you'll remember how crazy it was. And that E6 team like was known for having such good teamwork and having like crazy good chemistry, which is why they were so good. But anyway, so the current E6 team is Bevels, Decimate, General, and Dashy. And of course, General's always going to be a part of E6 because he's like the part owner. I think like his family like owns the org, so he's always going to be on that roster. And then Decimate and Bevels, I don't really know anything about, to be honest with you. So I won't really go into them too much. I think they're just 2 like younger players. Um, that have been around the scene, like the amateur scene, I would assume for a little bit. And then Dashy, who obviously came up with Straight Rippin', is a very good player in Infinite Warfare, and he seems to be able to transfer that to boots on the ground from what we've seen. I mean, like all 3 of these players, and then of course General, obviously, who we expected to kind of uh, be good at this game as well. They all seem to have good gun skill. They all seem to understand the game on boots on the ground. They all seem to be able to like get the timings and things like that. So I wouldn't really call them a surprise. I think I probably would have had E6 in my top 8 to make Pro League, despite not knowing 2 of these players. I think there was a lot of question marks about them, but one thing that E6 has always had is they've always had kind of this like skill wise top amateur team, or like players that you wouldn't like if you put them in a pro team, you don't know if they would perform. But in this specific like scenario, when they're on E6 and when they have these other top AM players with them, they always seem to perform. So for E6, I'm surprised that they got top 4. I think top 4 was a little bit of overachieving for them, but I think I would still have them as a top 8 team going forward. And then just trying to look at the bracket to see if there's any other surprises that I really want to talk about. Um, I mean, Next Threat got T64. They didn't even make T32, which was really surprising. They lost to, I'm actually not sure, but they, getting T64 is not very good. And then the other thing I want to do is give a shout out to the team called Korean Macro, who ended up playing Optic in top 8. The team is Atura, Brolic, Parzelian, and Stumpy. And this team, obviously, they didn't look very good against Optic, but they 3-0'd Amity, which I think certainly speaks to the skill level that they have. I mean, I think it, do I think they'll replicate it again? Not necessarily. Like I think it's pretty hard to say that this team is going to be able to do something uh, past an online level because we don't know anything about any of these players. But I think there's certainly like there's always a team or there's always like some players that break out in every game no matter what it is. And I think maybe, this could be the team. Obviously, like this is a huge like kind of leap. This is a huge like dark horse statement to make. But like if you look at it, there's always a team that does good that no one expects to. So maybe this is that team, right? Like maybe this Korean macro team that that's the name they went under, is a team that is going to perform. And the only way to really know is when we get to LAN at CWL Dallas. I mean, if they keep doing good like this in the pro points, then they'll make top eight. And, then they'll start in pool play. But if they don't keep doing good, then they will be going through open bracket, and if they go through open bracket and they do really well, then they've got a chance to perform. I think at a big level and be kind of the breakout team that makes it into pool play that no one's heard of, and then from there, who knows what can happen. Very similar to kind of what E United did, where they were like I can't remember if they started in pool play at that CW Atlanta event, but anyway, they made it all the way through and they like broke out as a team. Like no one knew too much about them except that they were dominating, ironically, in 2Ks before the first LAN, and then they went to the first LAN and they performed really well. So we'll see if the Korean macro team can do the same. And then besides that, I think the only other team I would really want to bring up is Evil Geniuses, who we talked about Rocket Esports, the team of Twiz, TCM, Nelson, and Demi. They lost to TK, again, who we already talked about. But Rocket Esports actually beat EG the round before they played TK. So I just wanted to bring that up because EG is a team that seems to have it together in most cases, and like all the players seem good together, and it's like a team of like esport console veterans, I guess you could say, because I don't know if you consider Enable a Call of Duty veteran, but obviously since Halo's been out, he's been competing in esports events since like 2005 or something like that, like just something crazy. So um so yeah, I just wanted to say that I think EG obviously like underperformed in this tournament. Um, Losing to Rocket Esports, but I think that they're fine. I don't think if you're an EG fan, you should be worried about them going forward. I know before scrims, I think it was either on Monday or Tuesday. It would have been Monday actually. They were talking about um, like something that they had learned. Like they were being very discreet about it, but watching the stream, they were talking about something that they had learned that they think was going to be a huge boost to them. So maybe, in this 2K, we'll see something meta breaking. You kind of hope so. At least I do. I think that like if a team creates a new meta to a map or to a game mode that like we haven't seen yet, I think that would be really interesting, and also to see if a team can adapt to it without having to play it, right? Because like if it's like a CTF or gridiron type thing, then there's not a lot of room to like because if you just pull that out on a team, like if they have something so groundbreaking that they can just beat a team outright, like how can a team really adapt to that and come back and manage to win? Like the only team that you'd think could do that is Optic, but it's not even because they adapt to the meta, it's just because they outslay EG, right? So EG gonna want to watch out for them in the next 2K coming up this weekend because clearly they might have something to show us. But I think the main takeaway from the 2K overall, like just a general takeaway that I'll end the video with, is Optic looks to be very good still. They look to be the number one team. They had a 27-1 map count record. I mean, they are obviously going to be the team to beat. They're the world champions, defending champions. TK looks like they could be a good team. Um, E6 might surprise some people with a top four finish here, but I wouldn't actually expect them to do this on LAN or in other 2Ks. But, well, I think they could do it in 2Ks, but not on other LANs. Um, and then besides that, I would say FaZe is a team that people need to watch for to make sure that they perform better than they did last week. And if you are an EG or an Echo Fox fan and you're worried, I would say don't be. I think your teams are going to be just fine.